The thing about this week's episode of Classroom of the Elite is it actually makes me rethink a lot about Ayanokoji's behavior, while also still feeling true to how I was feeling about him. Because the thing about Ayanokoji is he's a very manipulative guy, like he is. He can move everyone and has been moving everyone like chess pieces in the places that he needs them to be in order to get to the end result. We've always known that Ayanokoji comes from a messed up family in terms of, and especially with the latest episodes, they've really highlighted that he's pretty much just a lab rat at the end of the day. He's designed and built to do one thing, and his father is very clearly mad that he's at this school and he's trying to bring him back. The thing with Ayanokoji, especially with this episode, it's just like, he recognizes he's screwed. He recognizes that when the school years are done, he has 2 years left to go, right? When that's all done, if he's able to make it, he goes back and he doesn't get a life of his own. And it's interesting because now when I look at certain scenes, especially with how they hammered it into this episode, it's almost as if Ayanokoji's the guy who, he actually does care a little more than maybe I was giving credit, but it doesn't change the fact that he manipulates. I mean, look at the scene when they're doing like their little dinner party or whatever it is. He pushes Horikoshi to say, hey, you're the little sister, own this and use this, right? He pushes her to just deal with it, right? Like to embrace what's happening. And that was from a caring point of view, but it also was so that he could then talk to Manabu and have that separate conversation. So it's almost like he's one half caring and one half manipulating, but he can never differentiate between the two. And the idea that we can leave an episode like this where we have this strategy meeting and pretty much like everyone's kind of caught up to speed of what's going on, but that phone call with the man who's basically like, what is your end goal? And he's pretty much like, he says it in a very more complex way, but the TLDR is basically Ayanokoji saying, I'm screwed. My life is screwed. I have no control over my life, so I'm going to control and protect the little few years of this entire existence known as Ayanokoji's life as long as I can. And it's such a heartbreaking revelation on top of having this amazing development between brother and sister. I of course have a full live reaction to this week's episode of Classroom of the Elite over on my Patreon. If you want to see my full and good thoughts to this or any of these wonderful episodes, it's over there if you're interested. Now, the brother and sister stuff was great because usually when it comes to haircuts in anime, I think there's something, it's like a cultural thing in Japan, but I just know it from anime. It usually signifies like a very big change in someone's character. So like when they're focusing on the scissors and stuff, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be her changing and evolving. But it's actually so much better because, right? So the whole idea that the brother said, so Manabu said to Horikoshi that like, hey, I prefer longer hair. And one of his biggest things was he wanted her to be an individual, not just follow in the brother's shadow and footsteps, but be her own person and if not surpass him by her own accords. So the fact that for all this time she's had this long hair, even though she's always preferred short hair, and hell, she looks way better in short hair if I'm being honest. The fact that he also preferred short hair, but he said that because he knew she would follow in whatever he said. So she has to make decisions on her own and be able to rise above things and say, I'm gonna do this for me. So the fact that he's just so happy to see her cut her hair short after clearly keeping it long for him. It seems so simple on paper, but I think given the complexity of what we've seen over 3 seasons with their relationship and what's been hinted at from previously before the anime even started, it was such a powerful moment. And the fact that Ayanokoji was able to allow brother and sister to bond, because really without his help throughout these seasons, this moment never would have occurred, right? Like she would have been stuck in a rut at the end of the day. And it's really interesting, right? Because you have 1 episode left to go, and in a lot of ways I could have used this as a final episode if I'm being honest, but I'm very excited to see what they're gonna do because I was expecting like, okay, this is feeling a lot more slow and simple for like the first half of the episode, give or take. I was like, oh, they're gonna drop a bombshell by the end. And I guess they technically did with the parting scene, and also just kind of like really focusing on Ayanokoji in the way that I have over this episode. But it was just such a nice episode for being so different. It's high stakes without being the same type of high stakes as like, okay, here's this big chess match, or here's this like, oh, here's a principal or vice chairman, whatever you want to call it, dude's throwing, hey bitch, you use a cane, I'm gonna kick you and laugh at you as you fall. Like, it's a little different of conflict in terms of what we're dealing with here. But they did a very good job at humanizing Ayanokoji, but still keeping him the master manipulator that he has been, because where he comes from kind of turned him into such, but the idea that he'll do whatever it takes to hold on to these precious few years, because that's literally all he views he has. Obviously, the dad's not happy. The dad's going to continue to do bullshit. I mean, if we look at the meeting, right, as they say, like, okay, if we take care of this, quote unquote assassin, what's to say another one won't be sent? So it's like the only way you really deal with it is by cutting off the head of the snake that controls the pack, and that would be his father. But how do you do that, right? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty. All I know is that leaving their first year, and despite them being back at Class D, we had the goal of minimum Class B for the next year, hopefully Class A, of course, but at the same time, it feels like despite us starting where, ending where we started all those seasons back, it almost feels like we've surpassed Class D, even if that's where we're currently ranked. And that's how you know you have a damn good episode, a damn good season on your hand. And it did a lot of development. I think it's very hard to say 100% how Ayanokoji feels about any given character or any given situation, but I think when we start to peel the layers back of that stoic and just deadpan stare he'll give people, I think that little study group does mean something to him, because it's something simple, it's something mundane, it's something that just is normal life. I think Horikita actually does mean something to him, but at the same time, he knows how to use people and will continue to use people, because in order to keep this life that he's trying to preserve, there's certain things that need to happen, and most importantly, he recognizes the value of a tool, which unfortunately, that is a person. Like, but if you compare where he is at the start, because the teacher says it near the start of this episode, like, comparing where you guys were at the start of this year to like the end, like it's very night and day difference. You have grown tremendously. And I think for Ayanokoji as well, you're seeing a lot more humanity in him without losing the kind of manipulator that he is. And this isn't stuff that would magically switch overnight. Hell, by the end of his third year, he would still have a lot of that persona, but hopefully by the end of that third year, he'll find a way to be able to escape the hell that he feels like he's destined and forced to go down. And honestly, shit, man, I mean, this is just, I'm not saying we gotta do it, but I mean, if someone was to trip the dad walking down a giant flight of stairs, and maybe a cinder block fell on him, I mean, I don't think anyone would really be complaining, wink wink nudge nudge. But legitimately, I don't see how without killing this dude, how we get out of this. He just, like, do we have a chess game? Is it just going to be a game of chess? I don't know, but hopefully he figures it out. But either way, I really enjoyed this episode. I was expecting it to feel a little more slower, and I wouldn't really feel like making a video specifically on this episode, but just between my thoughts on Ayanokoji and what they did with brother and sister's reunion, and kind of felt like they finally reunited after all this time and could finally embrace each other. Really good episode, so let me know what you thought down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more, and like I mentioned, we have a full live reaction over on my Patreon. Hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Joe, Ryuki, and Leafdoor, Isaac Farnsworth, Alice Sosiev, Declan, Lesik Sykes, Bird's Nest, Gomison, Matter Paradoxa, Count Viscount, and Sarah. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.